hello. How are you guys? How was your weekend? I, I don't think I did anything this weekend. Like, I did go out, like I said in my last video, I did go out and all that stuff happened. Oh my god. But yeah, I didn't really do much. We had Holi today. It's a festival here that people celebrate. Though I expected it to be like super loud because Holi is usually really loud. People play songs and there's a lot of screaming. And I live in a place where the children, they love screaming, they adore it. So I was surprised. I was expecting to be woken up like multiple times. Maybe I slept through it, though that's hard to believe. But maybe I did. Maybe nobody celebrated Holi as much as I expected they would. But yeah. Today was also a Monday. Then Mondays are a holiday. I don't care. I don't think I've celebrated Holi since I was 13 years old. Yeah, I don't even remember. It's been so long. Like, my mom came in my room and she's like, "Can I put some color on your cheek? Just a little bit." I'm like, "No, leave me alone." I think she asked me like 3 times. No, like the first time she asked, I just said, "No, I don't want that." Second time she's like, "Can I?" I'm like, "No." Then she's like, "Can?" And I'm like, "No." No. Kind of feel bad about that, but I don't want color on my cheeks. I break out so easily, and nope, not messing with that shit. Hi Farah, it's been so long. How are you? But yeah, that happened. I feel like she felt dejected for a while, but then I told her I'd buy her some sweets and she just cheered up right away. There's nothing in this world that like really makes my mom happy other than like sweets. And not sweets like chocolate. No, she doesn't like chocolates. She wants real Indian sweets that are like so sugary and just drowning in syrup. Loves those. Like, all her choices are like that, and like those are the kind of choices that would make me sick. I can't eat something that's super sweet, but if it's drenched in sugar syrup, she's in. She's all for it. Let's fucking go. But yeah, today was Holi. I had to work though, so that is what I did. I just finished some time ago. So anyways, we should actually get started because I try to finish like at least 2 chapters in one day, and I can't do that if I just keep blabbering around like an idiot. I'm gonna drink some water to start because I am always dehydrated. You would think that remembering to drink water would be like the easiest thing in the world, but it somehow isn't. Though a lot of it also has to do with the fact that I'm extremely lazy, but Wait, I forgot something. Where are my rain sounds? There they are. Okay. I'm gonna change the screen. And let's go. Okay. I don't quite remember where we stopped last time. That's it. I don't know. It's like I have a 1 liter bottle. I keep it next to my bed. So it's always there, and I start feeling thirsty, and I'm like, I should drink some water. And then for some reason my mind just goes like, yeah, but to drink water I would have to reach out my hand, pick up the bottle and open it. Or I'm lying down right now, I'll have to sit up. Maybe later, and then I end up delaying it until I'm just like, wow, it's been 3 hours since I've had a sip of water. What the fuck? And the doctor's like, you should drink at least 2 liters, and I'm like, yeah. if it's just I can barely manage 1. 2 is like not today. It's not even not today, Satan, because I'm pretty sure that even at this point Satan would be like, please, I'm begging you, just drink some water. What is wrong with you? I'm just practicing for hell. I know where I'm going. I have no illusions about that. I'm just practicing. Okay, anyways, let's start. Oh god. Chapter 7, Nightmare. Oh yeah, I had left at the part where she met Jacob, flirted with him really badly. Can't believe he fell for that. I think she didn't even need to flirt with him. She could just say, "Hi, can you tell me?" And he would just blurt everything out. But whatever, Bella, you do you. Anyways, Chapter 7, Nightmare. I told Charlie I had a lot of homework to do and that I didn't want to eat anything. There was a basketball game on that he was excited about, though of course I had no idea what was special about it. So he wasn't aware of anything unusual in my face or tone. Once in my room, I locked the door. I dug through my desk until I found my old headphones and I plugged them into my little CD player. Oh, she has a CD player. I don't think even I have never had a CD player. We did have a Walkman, for which we had one cassette, and that cassette always just played that one song where it's just like, there she goes again. So I just kept on listening to that on repeat. Then my mom got a phone, so I just used to record. Not download, but record. Like sit in front of the TV and record whatever I wanted to listen to. Damn, she has a CD player. Do they even have CD players nowadays? I picked up a CD that Phil had given me for Christmas. It was one of his favorite bands, but they used a little too much bass and shrieking for my taste. I popped it into place and lay down on my bed. I put on the headphones, hit play, and turned up the volume until it hurt my ears. I closed my eyes, but the light still intruded, so I added a pillow over the top half of my face. Ew, girl, how lame are you? You don't even own a CD of music you like? I don't understand this woman. I concentrated very carefully on the music, trying to understand the lyrics to unravel the complicated drum patterns. But the third time I'd listened through the CD, I knew all the words to the choruses at least. I was supposed to find that I really did like the band after all. Once I got past the blaring noise, I'd have to thank Phil again. And it worked. The shattering beats made it impossible for me to think. This was the whole purpose of the exercise. I listened to the CD again and again until I was singing along with all the songs until finally I fell asleep. I opened my eyes to a familiar place, aware in some corner of my consciousness that I was dreaming. I recognized the green light of the forest. I could hear the waves crashing against the rocks somewhere nearby. And I knew that if I found the ocean, I'd be able to see the sun. I was trying to follow the sound, but then Jacob Black was there, tugging on my hand, pulling me towards the blackest part of the forest. Jacob, what's wrong? I asked. His face was frightened as he yanked me with all his strength against my resistance. I didn't want to go into the dark. Run, Bella, you have to run, he whispered, terrified. This way, Bella. I recognized Mike's voice calling out of the gloomy heart of the trees. I couldn't see him. Why? I asked, still pulling against Jacob's grasp, desperate now to find the sun. But Jacob let go of my hand and yapped, suddenly shaking, falling to the dim forest floor. He twitched on the ground as I watched in horror. Jacob! I screamed, but he was gone. In its place was a large, red-brown wolf with black eyes. The wolf faced away from me, pointing towards the shore. The hair on the back of his shoulders bristling, low growls issuing from his exposed fangs. Bella, run! My crowd cried out again from behind me, but I didn't run. I was watching a light coming towards me from the beach. And then Edward stepped out from the trees, his skin faintly glowing, his eyes black and dangerous. He held up one hand and beckoned me to come to him. The wolf growled at my feet. I took a step toward Edward. He smiled then, and his teeth were sharp and pointed. Trust me, he purred. I took another step. The wolf launched himself across the space between me and the vampire, fangs aiming for the jugular. No! I screamed, wrenching upright out of my bed. My sudden movement caused the headphones to pull the CD player off the bedside table and clattered to the wooden floor. Does she have prophetic dreams? Not that ever happened in the movies or the books, but how does she know that Edward's skin shimmers under the sun? That we haven't reached that whole reveal yet. She doesn't even, I mean, she has an idea that Edward's a vampire, but they haven't had that whole conversation in the forest where she's like, how old are you? And like, no, what was the conversation? Yeah, how old have you been? 17? And he goes, for a while. I keep thinking of Ash Ketchum for some reason whenever that scene comes to mind. But yeah, so how does she know that his skin shimmers? Yikes, Bella, what's going on with... Actually, I don't want to know. My light was still on and I was sitting fully dressed on the bed with my shoes on. I glanced disoriented at the clock on my dresser. It was 5:30 in the morning. I groaned, fell back, and rolled over onto my face, kicking off my boots. I was too uncomfortable to get anywhere near sleep, though. I rolled back over and unbuttoned my jeans, yanking them off awkwardly as I tried to stay horizontal. I could feel the braid in my hair, an uncomfortable ridge along the back of my skull. Yeah, the jeans might probably be why you're uncomfortable. Who the fuck sleeps in their jeans? I turned onto my side and ripped the rubber band out, quickly combing through the plaits with my finger. I pulled the pillow back over my eyes. It was all no use. My subconscious had dredged up exactly the images I'd been trying desperately to avoid. I was going to have to face them now. I sat up and my head spun for a moment as the blood flowed downward. First things first, I thought to myself, happy to put it off as long as possible. I grabbed my bathroom bag. The shower didn't last nearly as long as I hoped it would, though. Even taking the time to blow dry my hair, I was soon out of things to do in the bathroom. Wrapped in a towel, I crossed back to my room. I couldn't tell if Charlie was still asleep or if he had already left. I went to look out my window and the cruiser was gone. Fishing again. I dressed slowly in my most comfy sweats and then made my bed, something I never did. I couldn't put it off any longer. I went to my desk and switched on my old computer. I hated using the internet here. My modem was sadly outdated, my free service substandard. Aw, she has a modem. I can hear the dial-up sounds in my head. Aw. For some reason that's cute to me. Just dialing up took so long that I decided to get myself a bowl of cereal while I waited. I ate slowly, chewing each bite with care. When I was done, I washed the bowl and spoon, dried them, and put them away. My feet dragged as I climbed the stairs. I went to my CD player first, picking it up off the floor and placing it precisely in the center of the table. I pulled out the headphones and put them away in the desk drawer. Then I turned the same CD on, turning it down to the point where it was background noise. With another sigh, I turned on my computer. Naturally, the screen was covered in pop-up ads. I sat in my hard folding chair and began closing all the little windows. Eventually, I made it to my favorite search engine. I shot down a few pop-ups and then typed in one word, vampire. I keep forgetting that Twilight came out years and years ago, like even before we had Wi-Fi as it is now. So, like, just reading about all of this is just like make me feel like a child, which I don't enjoy. But yeah, this does bring back some memories, especially memories of my mom going, can you get off the internet so I can make a call? Or dial up. It took an infuriatingly long time, of course. When the results came up, there was a lot to sift through. Games, underground metal, and gothic cosmetic companies. Then I found a promising site, Vampires A to Z. I waited impatiently for it to load, quickly clicking close each ad that flashed across the screen. Finally, the screen was finished, simple white background with black text, academic looking. Two quotes greeted me on the homepage. Throughout the vast, shadowy world of ghosts and demons, there is no figure so terrible, no figure so dreaded and abhorred, yet died with such fearful fascination as the vampire, who is himself neither ghost nor demon, but yet who partakes the dark natures and possesses the mysterious and terrible qualities of both. Rev. Montague Summers. And to think today people love vampires. Dreaded? I don't think so. If there is in this world a well-attested account, it is that of the vampires. Nothing is lacking: official reports, affidavits of well-known people, of surgeons, of priests, of magistrates. Judicial proof is most complete. And with all that, who is there who believes in vampires? Rousseau. The rest of the site was an alphabetized listing of all the different myths of vampires held throughout the world. The first I clicked on, the Nag, was a Filipino vampire supposedly responsible for planting taro on the islands long ago. The myth continued that the Danag worked with humans for many years, but the partnership ended one day when a woman cut her finger and a Danag sucked her wound, enjoying the taste so much that it drained her body completely of blood. I read carefully through the descriptions, looking for anything that sounded familiar, let alone plausible. It seemed that most vampire myths centered around beautiful women as demons and children as victims. They also seemed like constructs created to explain away the high morality rates for young children and to give men an excuse for infidelity. Many of the stories involved bodiless spirits and warnings against improper burials. There wasn't much that sounded like the movies I'd seen, and only a few, like the Hebrew Estri and the Polish Upaya, who were even preoccupied with drinking blood. Only three entries really caught my attention: the Romanian Varacola, Varakulaki, powerful undead being who could appear as beautiful pale-skinned human, the Solvak Nalapsi, a creature so strong and fast it could massacre an entire village in the single hour after midnight, and one other, the Strigoni Benefici. About this, there was only one brief sentence. An Italian vampire said to be on the side of goodness and a mortal enemy of all evil vampires. It was a relief that one small entry, the one myth among hundreds that claimed the existence of good vampires. Overall, though, there was little that coincided with Jacob's stories or my own observations. I'd made a little catalogue in my mind as I read and carefully compared it with each myth: speed, strength, beauty, pale skin, eyes that shift color, and then Jacob's criteria: blood drinkers, enemies of the werewolves, cold skinned, and immortal. There were very few myths that matched even one factor. And then another problem, one that I remembered from the small number of scary movies that I'd seen and was backed up by today's reading. Vampires couldn't come out in the daytime. The sun would burn them to cinder. They slept in coffins all day and came out only at night. Aggravated, I snapped off the computer's main power switch, not waiting to shut things down properly. Through my irritation, I felt overwhelmingly embarrassment. Overwhelmingly embarrassed? What is this? Yeah, I have a weird copy. It's full of typos. It was all so stupid. I was sitting in my rooms researching vampires. What was wrong with me? I decided that most of the blame belonged on the doorstep of the town of Forks and the entire southern Olympic Peninsula for that matter. I had to get out of the house, but there was nowhere I wanted to go that didn't involve a 3-day drive. I pulled on my boots anyway, unclear where I was headed, and went downstairs. I shrugged into my raincoat without checking the weather and stormed out the door. It was overcast but not raining yet. I ignored my truck and started east on foot, angling across Charlie's yard towards the ever-encroaching forest. It didn't take long till I was deep enough for the house and the road to be invisible. The only sound to be the squish of the damp earth under my feet and the sudden cries of the jays. And this, kids, is how you get kidnapped. God, what's wrong with you? Why would you go into the forest of all places? There was a thin ribbon of a trail that led through the forest, or I wouldn't risk wandering on my own like this. My sense of direction was hopeless. I would get lost and much less helpful to surroundings. The trail wound deeper and deeper into the forest, mostly east as far as I could tell. It snaked through the Sitka spruces and hemlocks and the yews and the maples. I only vaguely knew the names of the trees around me, and all I knew was due to Charlie pointing them out to me from the cruiser window in earlier days. There were many I didn't know, and others I couldn't be sure about because they were so covered in green parasites. I followed the trail as long as my anger at myself pushed me forward. As that started to ebb, I slowed. A few drops of moisture trickled down from the canopy above, but I couldn't be certain if it was beginning to rain or if it was simply pools left from yesterday. Held high in the leaves above me, slowly dripping their way back to the earth. A recently fallen tree, I knew it was recent because it wasn't entirely carpeted in moss, rested against the trunk of one of her sisters, creating a sheltered little bench just a few feet off the trail. I stepped over the fern and sat carefully, making sure my jacket was between the damp seat and my clothes wherever they touched, and leaning my hooded head against the living trees. God, I've noticed this with Stephanie Meyer's writing. There's just so much. Like, descriptions are good, but some of her descriptions are just way too much. Like, it could be condensed, but it just goes on for so long. There's like this paragraph itself. I could just remove so many lines and it wouldn't even matter because it's not contributing anything to the entire narrative as a whole. This was the wrong place to have come. I should have known, but where else was there to go? The forest was deep green and far too much like the scene in the last night's stream to allow for peace of mind. Now that there was no longer the sound of my soggy footsteps, the silence was piercing. The birds were quiet too, the drops increasing in frequency, so it must be raining above. The fern stood higher than my head, now that I was seated, and I knew someone could walk on the path 3 feet away and not see me. Here in the trees, it was much easier to believe the absurdities that embarrassed me indoors. Nothing had changed in this forest for thousands of years, and all the myths and legends of 100 different lands seemed much more likely in this green haze than they had in my clear-cut bedroom. Hi, Sue! We are on Chapter 7, Nightmare, page 146. First, I had to decide if it was possible that what Jacob had said about the Cullens could be true. Immediately, my mind responded with a resounding negative. It was silly and morbid to entertain such ridiculous notions. But what then? I asked myself. There was no rational explanation for how I was alive at this moment. I listed again in my head the things I'd observed myself, the impossible speed and strength, the eye color shifting from black to gold and back again, the inhuman beauty, the pale, frigid skin, and more. Small things that registered slowly, how they never seemed to eat, the disturbing grace with which they moved, and the way they sometimes spoke, with unfamiliar cadences and phrases that better fit the style of a turn-of-the-century novel than that of a 21st century classroom. He had skipped classes the day we'd done blood typing. He hadn't said no to the beach trip till he heard where we were going. He seemed to know what everyone around him was thinking, except me. He had told me that he was the villain, dangerous. Could the Cullens be vampires? Well, there was something outside the possibility of rational justification was taking place in front of my incredulous eyes. Who wrote this line? And why? Whether it be Jacob's cold ones or my own superhero theory, Edward Cullen was not human. He was something more. So then maybe that would have to be my answer for now. And then the most important question of all, what was I going to do if it was true? If Edward was a vampire, I could hardly make myself think the words. Then what should I do? Involving someone else was definitely out. Couldn't even believe it myself. Anyone I told would have me committed. Only 2 options seemed practical. The first was to take his advice, to be smart, to avoid him as much as possible. To cancel our plans, to go back to ignoring him as far as I was able. To pretend there was an impenetrably thick glass between us in the one class where we were forced together. To tell him to leave me alone, and mean it this time. I was gripped in sudden agony of despair as I considered that alternative. My mind rejected the pain, quickly skipping on to the next option. This is such a wonderful line for any teenager. I was in a sudden agony of despair. You could have just picked one. It could have been sudden agony or despair, but no, it's sudden agony of despair. God, Stephanie. I could do nothing different. After all, he was something sinister. After all, if he was something sinister, he'd done nothing to hurt me so far. In fact, I would be a dent in Tyler's fender if he hadn't acted so quickly. So quickly, I argued with myself that it might have been sheer reflexes. But if it was a reflex to save lives, how bad could he be? I retorted, my head spun around in answerless circles. There was one thing I was sure of, if I was sure of anything. The dark Edward in my dream last night was a reflection only of my fear of the word Jacob had spoken, and not Edward himself. Even so, when I'd screamed out in terror at the werewolf's lunch, it wasn't fear for the wolf that brought the cry of no to my lips. It was the fear that he would be harmed, even as he called me with sharp-edged fangs. I feared for him, and I knew in that I had my answer. I didn't really know if there was ever a choice, really. I was already in too deep. Now that I knew, if I knew, I could do nothing about my frightening secret, because when I thought of him, of his voice, his hypnotic eyes, the magnetic force of his personality, I wanted nothing more than to be with him right now, even if... But I couldn't think it. Not here, alone in the darkening forest. Not while the rain made it seem made it dim as twilight under the canopy and pattered like footsteps across the matted earthen floor. I shivered and rose quickly from my place of concealment, worried that somehow the path would have disappeared with rain. It was there, safe and clear, winding its way out of the dripping green maze. I followed it hastily, my hood pulled across my face, become, becoming surprised as I nearly ran through the trees at how far I had come. I started to wonder if I was heading out at all, or following the path further into the confines of the forest. Before I could get too panicky, though, I began to glimpse some open spaces through the webbed branches, and then I could hear a car passing on the street, and I was free. Charlie's lawn stretching out in front of me, the house beckoning me, promising me warmth and dry socks. It was just noon when I got back inside. I went upstairs, got dressed for the day, jeans and t-shirt, since I was staying indoors. It didn't take too much effort to concentrate on my task for the day. Paper on Macbeth was due on Wednesday. I settled into outlining a rough draft contentedly, more serene than I'd felt since Thursday afternoon, if I was being honest. It had always been my way, though. Making decisions was the painful part for me, the part I agonized over. But once the decision was made, I simply followed through, usually with relief that the choice was made. Sometimes the relief was tainted by despair, like my decision to come to folks. But it was still better than wrestling with alternatives. This decision was ridiculously easy to live with, dangerously easy, and so the day was quite productive. I finished my paper before 8. Charlie came home with a large catch, and I made a mental note to pick up a book of recipes for a fish while I was in Seattle next week. The chills that flashed up my spine whenever I thought of that trip were no different than the ones I'd felt before I'd taken my walk with Jacob Black. They should be different, I thought. I should be afraid. I knew I should be, but I couldn't feel the right kind of fear. Yeah, you can only feel agony of despair. God, who wrote that? I slept dreamlessly that night, exhausted from beginning my day so early and sleeping so poorly the night before. I woke for the second time since arriving in Forks to bright yellow light of a sunny day. I skipped to the window, turned to see that there was hardly a cloud in the sky, and there were just fleecy white little puffs that couldn't possibly be carrying any rain. I opened the window, surprised when it opened silently without sticking, not having opened it in who knows how many years, and it sucked in the relatively dry air. It was nearly warm and hardly windy at all. My blood was electric in my veins. Charlie was finishing breakfast when I came downstairs, and he picked up on my mood immediately. "Nice day out," he commented. "Yes," I agreed with a grin. He smiled back, his brown eyes crinkling around the edges. When Charlie smiled, it was easier to see why he and my mother had jumped too quickly into an early marriage. Most of the young romantic he'd been in those days had faded before I'd known him, as the curly brown hair, the same color if not the same texture as mine, had dwindled, slowly revealing more and more of the shiny skin of his forehead. But when he smiled, I could see a little of the man who had run away with Renee when she was just 2 years older than I was now. I ate breakfast cheerily, watching the dust motes stirring in the sunlight that streamed in the back window. Charlie called out a goodbye, and then I heard the cruiser pull away from the house. I hesitated on my way out of the door, hand on my rain jacket. It would be a tempting fate to leave it at home. With a sigh, I folded it over my arm and stepped out into the brightest light I had seen in months. By dint of such elbow grease, I was able to get both windows in the truck almost completely rolled down. I was one of the first ones to school. I hadn't even checked the clock in my hurry to get outside. I parked and headed towards the seldom used picnic benches on the south side of the cafeteria. The benches were still a little damp, so I sat on my jacket, glad to have a use for it. My homework was done, and the product of a slow social life, but there were a few trick problems I wasn't sure I had right. My god, now you're bringing maths into this? Maths? Why the hell was I got to such a big paragraph? Trick problems, right. I took out my book industriously, but halfway through rechecking the first problem, I was daydreaming, watching the sunlight play on the red bark trees. I sketched inattentively along the margins of my homework. After a few minutes, I suddenly realized I'd drawn 5 pairs of dark eyes staring out of the page at me. I scrubbed them out with an eraser. "Bella!" I heard someone call, and it sounded like Mike. I looked around to realize that the school had become populated while I'd just been sitting there as absent minded. Everyone was in t shirts, some even in shorts, though the temperature couldn't be over 60. Mike was coming over me in khaki shorts and striped rugby shirt, waving. Hey Mike, I called, waving back, unable to be half hearted on a morning like this. He came to sit by me, the tidy spikes of his hair shining golden in the light, his grin stretching across his face. He was so delighted to see me, I couldn't help but feel gratified. I never noticed before, but your hair has red in it, he commented, watching between his fingers a strand that was fluttering in the light breeze. Only in the sun. I became just a little uncomfortable as he tugged the lock behind my ear. Great day, isn't it? My kind of day, I agreed. What did you do yesterday? His tone was just a bit too proprietary. I mostly worked on my essay. I didn't add that I was finished with it. No need to sound so smug. He hit his forehead with the heel of his hand. Oh yeah, that's due Thursday, right? Wednesday, I think. Wednesday? He frowned. That's not good. What are you writing yours on? Whether Shakespeare's treatment of the female character is misogynistic. He stared at me like I'd just spoken in big Latin. I guess I have to get to work on that tonight, he said, deflated. I was going to ask if he wanted to go out. Oh, I was taken off guard. Why couldn't I ever have a pleasant conversation with Mike anymore without it getting awkward? Well, we could go to dinner or something, and I could work on it later, he smiled at me hopefully. Mike. I hated being put on the spot. I didn't think that would be the best idea. His face fell. Why? He asked, his eyes guarded. My thoughts flickered to Edward, wondering if that's where his thoughts were as well. I think, and if you ever repeat what I'm saying right now, I will cheerfully beat you to death, I threatened. But I think that would hurt Jessica's feelings. He was bewildered, obviously not thinking in that direction at all. Jessica? Really, Mike? Are you blind? Oh, he exhaled, clearly dazed. I took advantage of that to make my escape. It's time for class and I can't be late again. I gathered my books up and stuffed them in my bag. We walked in silence to Building 3, and his expression was distracted. I hope whatever thoughts he was immersed in were leading him in the right direction. When I saw Jessica intrigued, she was bubbling with enthusiasm. She, Angela, and Lauren were going to Port Angeles tonight to go dress shopping for dons, and she wanted me to come too, but even though I didn't need one. I was indecisive. I thought it would be nice to get out of town with some girlfriends, but Lauren would be there, and who knew what I could be doing tonight. But that was definitely the wrong part to let my mind wander down. Of course, I was happy about the sunlight, but I wasn't completely responsible for the euphoric mood I was in, not even close. So I gave it a maybe, telling her I'd have to talk with Charlie first. She talked of nothing but the dons on the way to Spanish, continuing as if without an interruption when class finally ended. 5 minutes later, we were on our way to lunch. I was far too lost in my own frenzy of anticipation to notice much of what she said. I was painfully eager to see not just him but all the Cullens, to compare them with the new suspicions that plagued my mind. As I crossed the threshold of the cafeteria, I felt the first true tingle of fear slither down my spine and settle in my stomach. Would they be able to know what I was thinking? And then a different feeling jolted through me. Would Edward be sitting with me again? As was my routine, I glanced first towards the Cullen's table. A shiver of panic trembled in my stomach as I realized it was empty. With dwindling hope, my eyes scoured the rest of the cafeteria, hoping to find him alone waiting for me. The place was nearly filled. Spanish had made us late, but there was no sign of Edward or his family. Desolation hit me with a crippling strength. Oh my god! I need somebody to kind of just make a note of all of these lines. Agony of despair, desolation hit me with crippling strength. And then you just compare it to what she was thinking about before. And it's always, oh, Edward's not here. And it's like, oh god, girl, chill. I shambled along behind Jessica, not bothering to pretend to listen anymore. We were late enough that everyone was already at our table. I avoided the empty chair next to Mike in favor of one by Angela. I vaguely noticed that Mike held the chair out politely for Jessica and that her face lit up in response. Angela asked a few questions about the Macbeth paper, which I answered as naturally as I could while spiraling downward in misery. She too invited me to go with them tonight, and I agreed, now grasping at anything to distract myself. I realized I'd been holding on to a last shred of hope when I entered biology. Get you someone that leaves you in desolation like Ed. I don't think I could give that much of a fuck about anyone. Which is a weird thing to say, I know, but it's like I like to spend time by myself. So if it's like, if I had a significant other and they were like, hey, I won't be around for today, I'd just be like, cool story, bro. See you around. I probably shouldn't call my significant other call them bro, but yeah, I don't relate. I mean, I think I could have related to this as a teenager, but no, not now. I realized I'd been holding on to a last shred of hope when I entered biology, saw his empty seat, and felt a new wave of disappointment. The rest of the day passed slowly, dismally. In gym, we had a lecture on the rules of badminton, the next torture they had lined up for me. But at least it meant I got to sit and listen instead of stumbling around on the court. The best part was the coach didn't finish, so I got another day off tomorrow. Never mind that the day after they would arm me with a racket before unleashing me on the rest of the class. Huh? Do they do that? Tell you the rules? Like, take one PE class and tell you the rules of a game or something? Really? We call it physical education here, not gym. Because we play outside in the sun. Good old days. Good old days. So yeah, but we never had any classes where the teachers would be telling us the rules of the game we were playing. They would just be like, hey, here's a ball. Have fun. Anyways, I was glad to leave campus, so I would be free to pout and mope before I went out tonight with Jessica and company. But right after I walked in the door of Charlie's house, Jessica called to cancel our plans. I tried to be happy that Mike had asked her to dinner. I really was relieved that he finally seemed to be catching on, but my enthusiasm sounded false in my own ears. She rescheduled a shopping trip for tomorrow night, which left me with little in the way of distractions. I had fish marinated for dinner, with a salad and bread left over from the night before, so there was nothing to be done here. I spent a focused half hour on homework, but then I was through with that too. I checked my email, reading backlogs of letters from my mother, getting snippier as I progressed to the present. I sighed and typed a quick response. Mom, sorry I've been out. I went to the beach with some friends and I had to write a paper. My excuses were fairly pathetic, so I gave up on that. It's sunny outside today. I know, I'm shocked too. So I'm going to go outside and soak up as much vitamin D as I can. I love you, Bella. I decided to kill an hour with non-school related reading. I had a small collection of books that came with me to Folks, the shabbiest volume being a compilation of the works of Jane Austen. I selected that one and headed to the backyard, grabbing a ragged old quilt from the linen cupboard at the top of the stairs on my way down. Outside in Charlie's small square yard. Wait, what? Well, for physical education, I do remember that we were told a game given quick rules to make sure everyone knew what to do. That game was mostly dodgeball, though. Oh, we did play dodgeball. I remember that. But again, we played outside. So, with my school, I have been to two schools, and with both of them, they didn't have like a physical gym like they do, like in America, I guess. So we had two basketball courts outside, and that's where we used to usually play dodgeball. And then we had like a track field. So yeah, dodgeball was a game we used to play. Basketball, for those who knew how to play basketball. I didn't. I used to be very short when I was in school, so I could barely even like throw the ball to make it into the basket. Then I got a little taller and I could do that, but that's like the only thing I could. They tried to make us play football, had a club and everything for it. Didn't really work out. There was volleyball. People used to play volleyball. Hated that. It hurt my hands so much. There was Coco, if you know what Coco is. I was amazing at that game. I loved Coco. I was so fast. And what else did we do? Yeah, those. And then later on, like when I grew older, like in my last 2 years of high school, we had table tennis, but again, there was only one table, so how many people could play that? But yeah, we used to usually play out like in the sun in the burning heat. So thanks for that, teachers. Surprisingly, no one ever fainted. Anyways. Outside in Charlie's small square yard, I folded the quilt in half and laid it out of the reach of the trees, shadows on the thick lawn that would always be slightly wet, no matter how long the sun shone. I lay on my stomach, crossing my ankles in the air, flipping through the different novels in the book, trying to decide which would occupy my mind the most thoroughly. My favorites were Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. I'd read the most recently, so I started into Sense and Sensibility, only to remember after I began three that the hero of the story happened to be named Edward. Angrily, I turned to Mansfield Park. The hero of that piece was named Edmund, and that was just too close. My god, goal. No, whether it was cold, whether it was sunny, we were outside. Always. Like, if you want to get tanned, there's no better way to do that. Only if it was raining, we didn't go out because obviously that didn't make sense. But yeah. We even had exams for physical education where you had to play the game of your choice and the PE teacher would watch you and like grade you based on that. Weren't there any other names available in the late 18th century? I snapped the book shut, annoyed, and rolled over onto my back. I pushed my sleeves up as high as they could and closed my eyes. I would think of nothing but the warmth on my skin. I told myself severely. The breeze was light, but it blew tendrils of my hair around my face, and that tickled a bit. I pulled my hair over my head, letting it fan out on the quilt above me, and focused again on the heat that touched my eyelids, my cheekbones, my nose, my lips, my forearms, my neck, soaked through my light shirt. Next thing I was conscious of was the sound of Charlie's cruiser turning up into the brick of the driveway. I sat up in surprise, realizing the light was gone behind the trees and had fallen asleep. I looked around, muddled, with the sudden feeling that I wasn't alone. Charlie, I asked, but I could hear his door slamming in front of the house. I jumped up, foolishly edgy, gathering the now damp quilt and my book. I ran inside to get some oil heating on the stove, realizing the dinner would be late. Charlie was hanging up his gun belt and stepping out of his boots when I came in. Sorry, Dad, dinner's not ready yet. I fell asleep outside. I stifled a yawn. Don't worry about it, he said. I want to catch the score on the game anyway. I watched TV with Charlie after dinner for something to do. There wasn't anything on I wanted to watch, but he knew I didn't like baseball, so he turned it to some mindless sitcom that neither of us enjoyed. He seemed happy though to be doing something together, and it felt good, despite my depression, to make him happy. Dad, I said during a commercial, Jessica and Angela are going to look at dresses for the dance tomorrow night in Port Angeles, and they want me to go with them to help choose. Do you mind if I go with them? Jessica Stanley, he asked. And Angela Weber, I sighed as I gave him the details. He was confused. But you're not going to the dance, right? No, Dad. But I'm helping them find dresses, giving them constructive criticism. You won't have to explain this to a woman. Well, okay. He seemed to realize that he was out of his depth with girly stuff. It's a school night, though. We leave right after school so we can get back early. You'll be okay for dinner, right? Bells. Fed myself for 17 years before you got here, he reminded. I don't know how you survived, I muttered, then added more clearly. I'll leave some things for cold cut sandwiches in the fridge, okay? Right on top. It was sunny again in the morning. I awakened with renewed hope that I grimly tried to suppress. I dressed for the warmer weather in a deep blue V-neck blouse, something I'd worn in the dead of winter in Phoenix. I had planned my arrival at school so that I'd barely had time to make it to class. With a sinking heart, I circled the full lots looking for a space while also searching for the silver Volvo that was clearly not there. I parked in the last row and hurried to English, arriving breathless but subdued before the final bell. It was the same as yesterday. I just couldn't keep little sprouts of hope from building in my mind, only to have them squashed painfully as I searched the lunchroom in vain and sat at my empty biology table. The Port Angeles scheme was back on again for tonight, and made all the more attractive by the fact that Lauren had other obligations. I was anxious to get out of town so I could stop glancing over my shoulder, hoping to see him appearing out of the blue the way he always did. I vowed to myself that I would be in a good mood tonight and not ruin Angela's and Jessica's enjoyment in the dress hunting. Maybe I could do a little clothes shopping as well. I refused to think that I might be shopping alone in Seattle this weekend, no longer interested in the earlier arrangement. Surely he wouldn't cancel without at least telling me. After school, Jessica followed me home in her old white Mercury so I could ditch my books and truck. I brushed through my hair quickly when I was inside, feeling a slight lift of excitement as I contemplated getting out of folks. I left a note for Charlie on the table, explaining again where to find dinner, switching my scruffy wallet from my school bag to a purse I rarely used, and ran out to join Jessica. We went to Angela's house next, and she was waiting for us. My excitement increased exponentially as we drove out of the town limit. Okay, I'm gonna drink some water. There's something so weird about Stephanie's writing. I know I mentioned this before, but most of this chapter actually was nothing. Like, if you think about it, if you were to remove that entire scene of Bella falling asleep while being outside, of her walking into the forest aimlessly, like, there's just so many scenes that you could just remove, and nothing would be missing as such. Like, I feel like a lot of her writing is just padding the word count just to make it longer and longer, which isn't necessary, and it feels. The pacing is so slow, it feels like a drab to read because sometimes I just want to skip through a particular paragraph because I'm like, what the hell is this, man? It's. I mean, I get that she's trying to show that Bella is frustrated that Edward's not around, that his absence is making her overcome with agony of despair, and what else was that? And making her feel desolation and whatnot. But I think those two lines, like literally the paragraph, like the entire chapter could just be those two lines and you would know exactly how Bella's feeling. You don't need the extra stuff. But yeah, there's just like so much description in here that's not needed, and I love descriptions because it helps me imagine what's going on, but this is too much. Do we have time for another chapter at 6:18? I do want to go to bed a little early today because I am a bit exhausted. I had like a very busy day at work, so I think we can just do one chapter for today. We don't have to necessarily do 2 every day, I think. I don't know why that's a rule I came up with, like it has to be 2 chapters every day. It's really not necessary. Hold on. Okay, better. But yeah, boys and girls, if you ever find somebody... Wait, did I mute myself by mistake? No, I didn't. Yeah. Anyways, boys and girls, if you ever find somebody who makes you feel agony of despair and desolation, you may want to run away. That person might just be a vampire. My god, what has this book done to me? But seriously, it's so hard to believe that these books came out so many years ago, because I feel like Twilight is still so relevant even today. People keep talking about it because then you see these dated references where she's like, oh, I took out my CD player, and I'm like, my god, a CD player. And then she was complaining about that whole part where she was like booting up her PC and booting up her PC and like switching on her modem, and I was like, oh my god. I couldn't even imagine. Like, if I was ever in a situation where I had to go back to using a modem again, I would lose my mind because that shit is so slow. Sounds too codependent for me, no thanks. Agreed. But yeah, like you see all of these references and then you realize, oh wait, it's been more than 10 years since Twilight came out. And now I'm just thinking about my childhood days when there was no social media. I think Facebook had just come out at that time. There was no social media apart from MySpace. MySpace was really popular. And like my friend and I, to talk to each other, we used to send each other emails. I think I still have those older emails. And we would just be like talking about nonsense, sending each other. Most of our nonsense was just sending each other pictures of anime characters. which we got from sites that gave our PCs viruses, but we didn't know better because we were like 13 years old. But yeah. And then like the internet would suddenly cut off and I'd be like, what the hell happened? And then I'd be like, Mom, can you stop talking to your friends on the phone so I can use the internet? Because obviously with the modem it would be like, if there was a call, the modem would stop working. You couldn't have internet. Yeah, the dial-up sound. Oh god. And the little sign that used to tell you that, oh, it's like trying to connect to the internet. Almost there. We're almost there. Oh, to be a child. Certainly doesn't seem that great. Because now we're so used to like high-speed internet. Like if my internet isn't working fast enough, it annoys the heck out of me. And back then it used to take 10-15 minutes just to send one email. I used to just be sitting there refreshing the page over and over and over again because I'm like, why isn't she replying? What's going on? Like, I sent her a pic of a cute anime guy. Why isn't she replying? Back then it wasn't send nudes. It was, please, I sent you an anime boy. Send one in return. I'm begging you. Oh god, let me see. Yep, I found those emails. I was just looking them up on my phone and I'm like, oh god. I hope you like it. What is this? Oh god, I used to make AMVs when I was a kid and I used to send them to my friends through email. Yeah, I was really into making AMVs and we used to have the Windows Media video editor at that time. I used to make AMVs on that. My god. And oh god. Don't you dare delete this. If you do, I'll kill you. What the hell was wrong with me? Yikes. I'm gonna put this away because this is making me cringe. This is gonna keep me up at night and I have to sleep. I have work tomorrow. We used to do chain messages as well back then, right? Chain messages were so famous. Like, send this to 10 people. If you don't, you will die or misfortune will come to you. You'll have bad luck for a year. The chain messages used to be just the stupidest thing. You'll have to remain curious. I'm not sharing that with anybody. Those AMVs were part of a dark past I no longer like to think or talk about. Oh god. I used to make one for literally everything. Friendship Day AMV, Dad's birthday AMV, Mom's birthday AMV, existing AMV. And they were terrible. They were just pictures of anime characters with every single effect you could find on the Windows Media Editor or video editor, whatever it was called. I don't even know what it was called at this point. I don't miss those chain mails at all. Now that you say, so what's your email ID? Asking for a friend. That friend is me. I'm gonna send you chain emails. I mean, if you think about it, while there are no chain emails, there are WhatsApp forwards now, which people keep forwarding to each other, like, send this message to your 10 of your friends to have a good day. It's the same thing, just a different medium. Oh god. Anyways, enough reminiscing about the past, because reminiscing about the past leads to remembering cringe moments, which leads to questioning your existence, which I think I do enough without the extra help. So I'm gonna wrap things up here and I will see you guys tomorrow. We're gonna play some Stardew Valley and we're gonna also do Honkai this week because I think the update is coming out soon. Want Aventurine, my guy, my boy. So yeah, bye. See you guys, good night.